The 2018 MacBook Pro may look the same on the outside, but we can assure you this is more than just a simple spec bump. Welcome everyone, it is Andrew for Apple Insider, and this is a review of the 2018 15-inch MacBook Pro base model. In short, this is going to be the computer that people go after when they want the biggest screen possible on an Apple portable machine, but don't want to pay those high prices of the powerful i9 processor. In this exhaustive review, we're going to walk you through everything about this machine and wrap it up with what we recommend. So let's go ahead and start off with what's in the box. Visually, the box and its contents looks largely unchanged from years past. You're going to find the actual charging cable, a little cardboard box with some getting started guides, and of course the power brick itself. Just like last year, the 15-inch MacBook Pro comes with an 87-watt USB-C power brick. No MagSafe cables here, but you can at least replace each individual part by themselves. If that power brick breaks, you can swap it out, and if you need a new cable, you can swap that out. Makes it a little bit easier if one of the components ever breaks on you. Of those components, it's most likely going to be the USB-C cable. It's still relatively thin, and without any real way to kind of wrap it around the power brick any longer, it can definitely fray over time, especially if you're harsh on the actual necks of the cables. We also have the usual getting started and regulatory information. Basically walks you through what the touch bar is, what the display is, and a few of the other basic things that we're clearly going to cover in this review. You also have, of course, the beloved Apple stickers. We still have those hanging around. Also on the list of things that have not changed, we have the exterior. It's still that same unibody exterior that we saw debut with the touch bar in 2016. It's still just as thin and just as strong feeling as it ever has been. It houses the same powerful and gorgeous Retina display, and it has all the same ports that we've had for the past few years, and that means all Thunderbolt 3 ports. Over these Thunderbolt 3 ports, the MacBook Pro is capable of powering 2 5K displays or 4 4K displays. There is still no SD card port, which while I personally don't really have much of a use for, we can definitely see how a lot of aspiring photographers out there would really love to have that as an option. Luckily, that headphone jack is still sticking around on the right hand side, and we expect it will for quite a little bit longer. USB-C and Thunderbolt 3 have become a lot more capable since Apple originally debuted them, with just an immense amount of compatible cables and adapters and dongles out there in the market, which should really make USB-C a non-issue any longer. In fact, for a lot of pros out there, we actually prefer the USB-C over the legacy USB-A ports. Apple's wonderfully large trackpad is still here. It still is just as useful, though we haven't really seen any change in gestures or improvements over the last few years. It still works really well. It's still probably the best trackpad on the market, but again, no changes from what we've seen in years past. Of course, it sits right below that keyboard, and that keyboard is one of the actual physical changes here in this new version of the MacBook Pro. The new keyboard is a 3rd generation butterfly keyboard. There's still not a lot of vertical key travel, though we've gotten really used to over the last few years of typing on it every day. It feels about the same as it has before, though there's a little bit more resistance to it. Of course, that could ease up over time, as this is a brand new machine. In the long term, this should also be much more reliable. Underneath each keycap, iFixit found a little silicone barrier that's going to be there to help keep out that debris. So not only is that going to help keep debris out and the mechanism from getting jammed, it's also going to, again, help with it being a little quieter. So let's go ahead and listen to my original MacBook Pro and see how it sounds. Now let's compare it to the brand new 2018 15-inch MacBook Pro. Some people have said this sound difference is subtle, but I don't think it's subtle at all. I think there's a big difference between the audio that you get from one versus the other. And when your girlfriend is sitting there complaining about how loud your keyboard is, it definitely makes a difference. Unfortunately, Apple has not improved the resolution of their displays, though they're still the same Retina quality displays that we've had in the years past that support the P3 wide color gamut. They're really gorgeous displays, but they're going to walk you through a new setup process for True Tone right when you turn on the Mac. True Tone, a technology that Apple first debuted in the iPad, will adjust the white balance of the display based on the ambient lighting with the room that you're in. It uses a pair of built-in sensors right in the display to make this change happen, and it not only works with Apple's built-in display, but select third-party displays as well, including the LG Ultrafine 4K and 5K monitors. The changes can be super subtle, and it's not something that you're honestly supposed to be able to notice as the day goes on. It's just supposed to kind of change in the background based on the room that you're in, with the screen always looking natural and white. Of course, you can disable this by going into System Preferences and then Displays. Any photographer out there, or perhaps even a video editor, really may want to turn this off because it's going to be more important to see the actual colors coming through instead of having the display changing its white balance all the live long day. Anyone spending their time in word processors, emails, and the web really are going to prefer to have this option enabled. Fun fact, True Tone also works on the built-in touch bar, which still resides just above the keyboard and below the screen. Though to be honest, in our testing, it was really hard to tell the difference when it was enabled versus disabled. There's simply just not a lot of color and white happening on the touch bar. As far as the touch bar goes, it still hasn't improved versus our initial impressions more than a year ago. There are still a few neat tricks that it can do here and there, but it has largely not proved its usefulness over a traditional set of function keys. Apple continues to build it into its Pro mobile workstations, so they clearly believe in its future and it appears here to stay. One aspect though that has changed just a little bit is what powers the Touch ID chip that is baked into the right hand side of the touch bar, and that would be Apple's T2 coprocessor chip. This custom designed chip handles a lot of things and is an upgrade from the secure T1 chip that we saw with the original MacBook Pros with Touch Bar back in 2016. It handles a bunch of different stuff for the system, including some things regarding audio, storage, and secure boot. The one big area that we saw that was really nice though was how it deals with encrypting files. When you had disk encryption turned on, that could slow things down here and there, but now that's handled by the T2 processor, it's a lot quicker. So it handles all of that stuff now, as well as still protecting your information for Touch ID. Touch ID is still handy to unlock your Mac, but honestly, I still prefer just to automatically log in using my Apple Watch. Whether it's because of the T2 chip or just improved speakers, both the speakers themselves and even the microphones all sound better here on the 2018 MacBook Pro. They're not any louder per se, but they definitely feel fuller with more mids and more bass. Audio picked up by our built-in microphones definitely sounded better, though in some instances, a lot of the recordings had more background noise than we heard in the past, but voices still came through more clear than before. We've been testing the MacBook Pro for roughly 2 weeks, and halfway through that process, Apple dropped a software update that fixed some significant thermal throttling issues, especially apparent with the i9. We're not going to dive into that too much because again, it's mostly on the i9, but all the testing, we redid it after that updated patch to see how everything would perform. So let's go ahead and talk about the different sizes of MacBook Pro and the different specs before we get into our actual testing and our results. For MacBook Pro, there are 2 different sizes, the 13 and the 15 inch. The base model 13-inch without the touch bar has not been changed. Then we have the new 13-inch model with a touch bar that has been upgraded to that quad-core i5 processor. And then we have the 15-inch, which is what we're looking at. The 15-inch MacBook Pro comes in 2 base configurations, the 2.2 6-core Intel Core i7 and a 2.6 6-core Intel Core i7. We have that 2.2 GHz model to test out right now today. It can also be upgraded to the more powerful 2.9 GHz i9 processor, which we're going to save for a separate, really pro-level review. We've been doing a ton of testing with our base model 2.2 GHz Core i7, but not only do we run those tests, we ran them again and again and again and averaged all of those results. We're comparing our base model from this year against the top high-end, most spec'd out model from last year, and we're going to see how they compare. Starting out, we did a video export test from Final Cut Pro. I exported this short 4K video at 4K resolution at roughly 30 frames per second. Just for this one test, I compared it to my daily driver, which is a late 2016 2.7 GHz i7 processor. The results were honestly substantial. When I compared the two, my older late 2016 model actually took 50% longer to render the same file as the new 2.2 GHz base model. I was definitely questioning things a little bit beforehand, but after I saw this huge rendering difference in Final Cut Pro, it makes me consider wanting to upgrade to these new models. The results were even more impressive when we turned to Geekbench 4 and the Cinebench R15 tests. Starting out with what was least impressive, the OpenGL graphics test inside a Cinebench R15. The AMD Radeon Pro 550X is not all that different from last year's graphics, and that's apparent in our test results. After running the test on our new MacBook Pro 4 times back to back to back to back, we averaged 88.96 FPS. Performing the same test with the same methodology on our high-end 2017 MacBook Pro, we averaged 88.57 FPS, barely even a noticeable change. What really did pique our interest, however, was the impressive results from the Cinebench R15 CPU benchmark. Last year's model pulled in 763 for the best you could buy at the time, and this year, on the base model, we averaged 930.75. That's a huge difference year over year. Not only that, but on the high end, it actually spiked up to 1053, far eclipsing the top scores from the past 2 years. Turning to the standard Geekbench 4 test, we yielded 4972 and 22009 on the single and multi-core test for our new 2018 base model. Comparing that to the 2017 high-end model, that one scored 4946 and 16599. That's a huge difference on the multi-core, and that is due to those new 6-core processors that come with the 15-inch Pros. So to summarize, graphics have not changed that much year over year, but processing power has significantly improved. There's still so much more to cover though. For instance, baked into this new MacBook Pro, we have Bluetooth 5, which is a first for the Mac. This new spec allows for low energy transmissions all the way up to 4 times the range of Bluetooth 4.2 low energy. That's a theoretical maximum of around 800 feet. It also has way more bandwidth, up to double the bandwidth with the same amount of power. You'll need some new accessories to take advantage of it, but you should start to see them arrive and some huge improvements along the way. This base model also now ships with 4 gigs of video RAM instead of the 2 gigs that it started out with before. You could still go up to 4 gigs, but it would cost you some extra change. Now you don't have to worry about that in the slightest, it just comes with it. The system RAM has also been updated. It used to be LP or low power DDR3, and now it is DDR4. It's going to take a little bit more power, which is partially why Apple increased the battery size in these new models. In our battery testing over the past couple weeks, it really hasn't made a difference in actual real-world performance. When I'm actually using my Pro applications, I still only get a little over 3 hours of actual use time plugging away in some heavy video editing. If you're not so intense with your machine and having a little bit of a lighter workload, we did see the battery extend a little bit longer than it did in the past. These new models also support Hey Siri, which is partially because of that T2 chip. This is actually really handy because you can ask her to open different folders, go to different websites, and it works in a modal instead of taking over your whole screen like it does on iOS. We're also kind of excited for macOS Mojave, where we'll actually be able to control our home and HomeKit from Siri. Our biggest problem was just knowing which device Siri would pop up on when we queried for her. Alongside the MacBook Pros, Apple updated a few different accessories, including partnering with Blackmagic on an official, more or less, eGPU unit, which can really increase your graphics powers, and we saw a new leather sleeve just for the latest MacBook Pros. These leather sleeves are kind of a polarizing item. I mean, you did spend that much on your laptop, so what's spending a little bit more to make sure that it's protected? And since it's made by Apple, you can know that it's high quality. It's made out of really nice European leather and fits the MacBook Pros like a glove. It comes in a few different colors and again, just works really well with MacBook Pro. It fits in perfectly, comes on and off easily while still staying snug. It has a really nice finish on it that's going to allow most water to kind of pill off and roll off the side, but it still should develop a really nice rich patina the more that you use it. It's also pretty much as slim as you can get when it comes to an official MacBook case of any kind. And honestly, I prefer using a sleeve instead of an actual case that clips on to the MacBook Pro itself. It also gives it more or less a little bit of a pad to rest on whenever you have it out in the field. To summarize this review, Apple has done an amazing job with the latest MacBook Pros. They are faster than ever, they are still elegantly designed, super slim, and with macOS Mojave just around the corner, they're going to be even more powerful software-wise than they ever have been in the past. I know a lot of people want that larger screen, so they don't want the 13-inch MacBook Pro, which leaves them with this base model, and they can feel more comfortable than ever that they're going to get a machine that's worth what they paid for. It is improved across the board and kind of feels like where the Mac should have been a year or so ago. Performance is exceptional. It has features that I kind of wished would have been here before, including the Hey Siri and the True Tone display. Even USB-C has become mainstream enough that you're going to have any sort of cables and adapters you need pretty much readily available. And many new products, including hard drives and other accessories, all come with USB-C out of the gate, so it should really make buying anything new even more accommodating. Other than the few outliers that really need that high-end processing power of the i9, the new 15-inch base MacBook Pro could be the perfect one for anyone who wants a capable machine with a larger display.
If you enjoyed this video, like it and hit that subscribe button. Also, check out our price guide, which makes it extremely easy to find the best deals on Apple products updated daily. Be sure to follow us on social media, and we'll see you in the next video.